firms in competitive markets. As I just stated in the previous chapter, Chapter 13 is the foundation for the next 4 chapters. This chapter is on competitive markets, and we'll talk about monopoly in the next chapter, and monopoly is competition and oligopoly. So we learned about the cost side, now we look at the revenue side. So this market is the competitive market. That's where there's a lot of competition, or when you have perfect substitutes. Monopoly is the opposite. That's when there's no competition. Why is that? Because there is no substitute. Then, of course, you're the monopoly. If you are the only person that's going to sell this product, then there's no substitute. We'll talk about that there. But then in the middle, we have partial substitutes. So there is some competition, but it depends. So that's chapter 16 and 17. All right, so now we're going to jump in to talk about the competitive market. We'll look at what is marginal revenue, and we'll try to describe what is a perfectly competitive market, and see how firms in this market will determine quantity to maximize profit, and to see when it would choose to shut down or when it would choose to exit. And then we'll look at how individual firm decisions can aggregate into what we call market supply. So what is a perfectly competitive market? So the key thing is that there are perfect substitutes. If a consumer does not buy from this seller, it can buy from somebody else. If the sellers do not sell to this consumer, it can always wait for another consumer to buy it. And it's typically because there's a market with many buyers and sellers, and also they're trading the same product. That's why it's a perfect substitute, right? I mean, if you buy an iPhone, you can buy the iPhone from Mr. Computer next door, but you could also order it online on PC Home or Momo or from Apple.com. And it's the same product. So that's something that's important. Because if you buy this from a seller that's going to give you a different product, suppose somebody's going to give you a J phone, maybe you shouldn't. So then it's not really a perfect substitute. And because of this, so all of the buyers and sellers take the market price as given. So they are price takers. It's like no matter where you go to buy an iPhone, the prices are almost the same. Sometimes some stores, they give you some free gifts, like a case, or here's a protection sheet for you, or they will give you some promotion. Oh, nowadays, Apple does not give you a charger, so they will give you a charger as a gift and so on. But compared to the price, relatively, the price is flat. The other thing that's important is that firms can freely enter and exit the market. So free entry and exit is essential to introduce competition. Yeah, because you'll see later, but the key thing is that if the firms are doing very well, then other firms can join. And if firms are doing bad, they can choose to leave. Okay, so when we get to monopoly, we'll see why this is important, because the flip side of this is when you have barrier of entry, then of course there's no substitute, there's no competition, because nobody can come in, because there is this barrier of entry. But okay, in the competitive market, firms can freely enter and exit. All right, so let's look at the revenue side of a competitive firm. So total revenue is price times quantity. The key thing here is that because you are in a competitive market, price is fixed. It's the fixed market price. And so you have to decide how much quantity you want to sell. Just like you have total cost and average cost, we have total revenue and average revenue, which is you divide total revenue by quantity. And then you have marginal revenue. Just like you have total cost, average total cost, and marginal cost, on the revenue side, you have total revenue, average revenue, and marginal revenue. So that's the incremental gain in total revenue because of selling another unit of quantity. So if you're going to sell another unit, then how much revenue is the firm is getting? All right, so in the case of a competitive market, because you are a price taker, so the P is a constant. So what that means is that total revenue is quantity times a constant, that's the market price. So if you divide this by Q, then it's the constant, it's the market price. And how much does marginal revenue increase? Well, it's the same constant. Yeah, so for competitive markets, the average revenue equals to this market price, that's the constant, equals to marginal revenue. All right, so here's an example. So here we have Amari's apple orchard, and you can produce up to 10 bushels of apples per year, and the current market price is $20 per bushel. So calculate Amari's apple orchard total revenue, average revenue, and marginal revenue. So here's the quantity, and here's the market price, always 20. So what is total revenue? What is average revenue? And what is marginal revenue? Okay, so please join the quiz. So which of the following statements are true about Amari's apple orchard's total revenue, average revenue, and marginal revenue? So first one, total revenue for selling 5 bushels of apples is $20. Second one, average revenue decreases as Amari sells more bushels of apple. Marginal revenue is constant as Amari sells more bushels of apple, and none of the above. Okay, so here we see that the majority of you say that the answer is marginal revenue is constant, and that is the correct answer. Okay, so let's take a look. Total revenue is price times quantity. So 0 times 20 is 0, 1 times 20 is 20, 2 times 20 is 40, 3 times 20 is 60, and so on. So here is your total revenue. And the average revenue is total revenue divided by quantity. So 0 divided by 0, not available. So 20 divided by 1 is 20, 40 divided by 2 is 20, and so on. So all of this is 20. And the increment in total revenue going from 0 to 1 is 20, 1 to 2 is 20, 2 to 3 is 20. So marginal revenue is also 20. So this is an illustrative example of a competitive market. All right, so remember, the goal of the firm is to maximize profit, which is total revenue minus total cost. And total revenue is price times quantity. And the total cost is the fixed cost plus variable cost. This is what we know from before. So which quantity maximizes a firm's profit? Well, rational people think at the margin. So if quantity increases by 1 unit, revenue increases by marginal revenue, and cost goes up by marginal cost. So the question is, which one is bigger? If marginal revenue is larger than marginal cost, then producing this 1 more unit can increase profit. If marginal revenue is smaller than marginal cost, then producing this 1 more unit is going to decrease profit. So you should actually decrease production. So because of this, profit is maximized at the quantity where marginal revenue equals to marginal cost. All right, so let's look at Amari's apple orchard, look at the profit. So here we'll just make up the total cost for Amari across all of this. And so where is profit maximized? First question. Then is MR greater to MC or smaller than MC at this profit maximizing quantity? So let's join the quiz. So where is profit maximized? So here is your big table. Okay, so some of you say 1 to 2, some of 8 or 9, some of say none of the above, but the majority of you say 6 to 7, and that is the right answer. The next one, is marginal revenue greater or smaller than marginal cost at this profit maximizing quantity? Okay, so a lot of you say equal, some say greater, some say smaller, and the answer is equal. Let's take a look. So the marginal revenue we already know, it's always $20. That's the market price. Just subtracting total cost from total revenue, you get your profit. So 0 minus 6 is minus 6. $20 minus $14 is $6, and so on. So you can get all of this. And if you look at this, of course, you can also calculate marginal cost from total cost. So when the $6 increases to $14, you know that the marginal cost is 8. Going from 14 to 24, it's $10, and so on. And so what you get here is that when marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost, that's the quantity from 0 up to 6, increasing quantity increases profit. But when you go from 8 to 10, where marginal revenue is smaller than marginal cost, then reducing the quantity would actually raise your profit. And it's at the MR equal to MC where profit is maximized. That's exactly where the marginal revenue equals to marginal cost. Both are $20. So it's between 6 to 7. Going up to 7, well, if you look at it, producing at exactly 6, that gives you $35 a profit, same as 7. So it's the same thing. That's where it's 0. Okay, so this is when you fix a market price. So suppose market price is P1. If you look at this, if you produce QA, then marginal cost is smaller than marginal revenue, so you should increase that. And if you produce QB, marginal cost is greater than MR, so you shouldn't produce that. You should reduce quantity up to when you go back to MR equals to MC. That's your Q1. So in this sense, a competitive firm in this perfectly competitive market, well, it should take this price as given and try to equate MR equal to MC to find the right quantity to produce. So here the rule is MR equals to MC to maximize profit. All right, so suppose the price goes up to P2. Now what should the firm do? Well, now we have to go through the entire exercise again. But essentially, well, now you should find the new profit maximizing quantity, again, based on MR equal to MC. So now you have this new MR, which is P2, and it intersects the marginal cost curve at Q2. So that's your new profit maximizing quantity at this new price. So what this means is that your marginal cost curve basically gives you the right quantity to produce given each and every market price. So in that sense, the MC curve is the firm's supply curve. The marginal cost curve is the individual firm's supply curve. But the question is, how low can we go? So that's the question about shutdown, which is a short-run decision not to produce anything because of market conditions. So for example, during the outbreak in the summer, a lot of restaurants in Taiwan decided to shut down because there was a lockdown. Nobody can come to the restaurant and eat. They can only have takeout. You cannot dine in. So they had to shut down. That's a shutdown. Of course, what that means is that these restaurants might not even need to hire workers. You just close the whole shop. But also, it could be that, so the chefs would still be there, and they will be taking orders from Uber Eats, Food Panda, and so on to fulfill these takeout orders. But at least the restaurant itself is shut down. So quantity is 0. No dine-ins, so you just shut down. But there could be also a long-run choice to exit, which means that you decide to just leave the market. Actually, some of the restaurants, after the lockdown is finished, they did not come back. They decided to exit the market directly. And the difference is that if you shut down in the short run, you still have to pay rent. You still have to pay the fixed costs. If you rented this space, you still have to pay rent. But if you exit, then of course, in the short run, you might have to breach the contract. But in the long run, when you decide to exit, when the contract expires, then there's no cost. So now you can see, because now a lot of restaurants now reopened, so you know that they only shut down during the summer. But some of the restaurants who did not come back, you know that they exited during the pandemic. All right, so the question is, should a firm shut down in the short run or not? That's a short run decision to make. And the cost for shutting down is you don't get the revenue. So total revenue is gone because you choose quantity to be 0. The benefit is you don't have to pay the variable costs. If you shut down, you don't have to hire any workers. You don't need to pay for electricity. If it's a restaurant, then you don't have to buy food, buy the raw material, buy rice, vegetables, meat. You need none of that. You still have to pay fixed costs. So for a restaurant, you still have to pay for the rent. Too bad. I mean, usually for electricity, a lot of these restaurants, they sign a contract with Taipower, so they still have to pay the basic amount. So fixed costs, you still have to pay. But the variable costs, you don't have to pay. So what that means is that if your total revenue is smaller than variable costs, then you should choose to shut down because you lose the revenue, but you save the variable costs. If you divide both sides by quantity, remember, because total revenue is price times quantity, so divided by quantity, you get price. If the price is smaller than average variable cost, then you should just produce 0. So graphically, so the key thing is that if price is greater than AVC, the average variable cost, then you should produce where price equals to marginal cost. But if it's smaller than that, then the firm can say, hey, why should I operate? I should just shut down. So in the short run, to be more precise, this is the firm's short run supply curve. So it's the segment of the marginal cost curve that's above the average variable cost curve. Okay, so the firm's short run supply curve is the portion of its marginal cost curve that's above the AVC. What about exit? Oh, before we go on, we should look at this. Sunk costs. This is something that I think we talked about. This is a cost that you already paid and cannot be recovered. So you should ignore this when you make a decision because you already paid for this. The short run, your fixed cost is sunk cost. You already signed a contract to rent the space for a whole year. You pay the rent regardless. So you should not consider the fixed cost. I think the leading example of this is, I'm not sure if you ever tried this. You decide to go to the movie theater to watch a movie. Especially now the pandemic is mild, so you can go to the movie theater. And after 30 minutes, you realize, gosh, this is the worst movie I've ever seen. What should you do? You already paid for the price of the movie ticket, but that's sunk cost. You already paid it and you cannot demand a refund. Too bad. Are you going to sit in this movie and suffer for another 2 hours? Or should you just walk out? Well, rational people think at the margin. And so you should not consider that, oh, I already paid $250 for this movie ticket, I should just walk out. How many of you actually try to walk out? Some of you, okay. How many of you do not do this? Okay, others. So sunk cost is a problem, right? Of course, this also depends on who you're going to the movies with, because, I mean, if you're going with your significant other and he or she is enjoying this movie, then maybe you shouldn't walk out, right? Otherwise, you guys will break up. That is a real cost. That's not sunk cost. That is also a problem. But there is a real issue. If you already paid the sunk cost, well, emotionally, you're attached to this, and you say, given I paid for the movie ticket, I should watch it. But rationally, rational people should think at the margin. So maybe you should think twice and think what you could have done for the remaining 2 hours instead of sitting in this bad movie. Okay, so here's an example of an exercise. So while attending a concert, you paid 700 NT dollars for a hoodie of your favorite artist. But then you realize that it's 2 sizes too small. So you thought you would fit in a L size, but actually you need XXL. Too bad. So you decide to sell your hoodie to your cousin who lives in a different city. You have to pay 200 NT dollars for HCT, 新竹货运, to send this package to your cousin. Question, what is the lowest price you should ask for the hoodie? Okay, let's join. Okay, so what is the lowest price you should ask for the hoodie? 0, 200, 700, 900, or none of the above? So you paid $700 for the hoodie, but it's too small. And you decided to ship it to your cousin, and the shipping costs 200 NT dollars. So how much should you ask for? Okay, some say 200, some say 900, some even say none of the above. Well, it's pretty diverse. And the answer is 200. Why is it 200? Well, the key thing is that you already paid the $700. It's sunk cost. Too bad. Can you go and demand a refund from your favorite artist? No. Too bad. So, well, as long as your cousin is willing to pay at least $200, well, you might as well just give this hoodie to him or her. Otherwise, you'll have this hoodie in your closet that's gonna take up space and you'll never use it anyway. Of course, you can think about other reasons why you would have a different answer. But what I do want to illustrate here is that there is a reason why when companies are running a clearance, trying to sell off these inventory, they can price very low, because all this production cost is sunk cost. And what they really want to do is they want to free up the storing space and prepare for the next season or for the new products. And so because of this, well, I mean, as long as it's worth the shipping, let's just clear everything. All right, so that's the short run decision. Do you want to shut down or not? And the key thing is that you should ignore sunk costs. Empirically, whether people ignore sunk costs, that's a difficult question. In the long run, the question is, should you exit or enter in the long run? And so the cost for exiting the market, again, you lose your revenue, so you're giving up total revenue. And the benefit is you don't have to pay costs. And now it's the total cost, because there is no fixed cost in the long run. All of the costs are variable now. So your long run decision should be that if total revenue is smaller than total cost, or if you're making a loss, so your profit is negative, then you should exit. And in fact, if you divide this both sides by quantity, you get price smaller than average total cost. So when the price is lower than your average total cost curve, then you should exit. The flip side is this. Remember, we have free entry. So if a firm is making profit, the other firms say, hey, maybe I should come in. So if you see total revenue greater than total cost, then you should enter, because you're making a profit. And if you divide both sides, of course, that means that you are above the average total cost curve, because it's P greater than ATC. So, okay, so let's go back to this. Here you have the ATC curve, and the marginal cost curve is crossing the lowest point. And so if the price is above ATC, then you should produce at the quantity to maximize profit. That's where price equals to marginal cost. So that's the segment on the marginal cost curve that's above ATC, because in these prices, you should enter. But if price is below ATC, then you should exit in the long run, because it's not worth it. You're having negative profit. So the long run supply curve of a firm is the portion of the marginal cost curve that's above the ATC. Remember, in the short run, it was the AVC. It's the average variable cost. But in the long run, it's the average total cost curve. All right, so let's go back to Amari's example. So let's try to find her profit. So if this is the MC curve, then at price $20, then you can find that quantity Q1 equals to 7. That's where MR equals to MC. So that's where you can maximize profit. What is the profit? Well, if you think of it, total revenue is price times quantity. So it's this green area, 7 bushels of apples times $20 each. So it's $140. That's total revenue. Where's the total cost? Well, it's the average total cost, $15 times quantity 7. So it's 105, not 10. So there's a 5 there. So 140 minus 105, the difference of $35, or it's literally the difference between 20 and 15, that's $5 multiplied by quantity 7. $35 is the profit. Okay, so now determine this firm's profit or loss. So now here's the price at $3. So this is a different firm. This is a marginal cost curve, average total cost curve, and average variable cost curve. And so calculate total revenue, total cost, and calculate the profit, and find which region represents the profit or loss on the graph. Okay, so please join the quiz. So what is the profit maximizing quantity at price equals to $3? Okay, so the majority of you say 30, some say 32, 40, and the answer is 30. Yeah. Okay, what is the ATC at this quantity? Okay, so the majority of you say it's $5, and it is indeed $5. So let's take a look. The profit maximizing quantity is where MR equal to MC. That's the rule. So you find that when at $3, intersect with the marginal cost curve when the quantity is 30. So that's the profit maximizing quantity, 30. Then for quantity equal to 30, you go up to see the ATC curve is at $5. So that's the average total cost at $5. What that means is that price is smaller than ATC, so you are making a loss. It's a loss. But you will still produce because you are above the AVC curve, which is the curve that's below. So you keep producing. So your loss is the ATC minus the price. So $3 and $5, the difference is a loss of $2 per unit, multiplied by your quantity of 30, so your loss is $60. And it's shown here in the graph. Okay, up to here, we see the individual firm's decisions on to what quantity to choose to produce and sell to maximize profit, and then when to exit or enter, when to shut down. Now we'll look at how you can aggregate this to get market supply. Here we're going to make a couple assumptions. The first one is that all existing firms and potential entrants have the same cost curves. You can think of counterexamples of this very easily, but this is the simple assumption. Everybody has the same cost. The cost curves are the same for all of the firms. And each of the firms' costs is not affected if other firms enter the market. So these are the two assumptions we're going to make. And then, so the number of firms are going to be fixed in the short run because there are fixed costs. But then it's going to be variable in the long run because there's free entry exit. People can decide to enter or exit the market. Okay, so under these assumptions, what's going to happen? So in the short run, as long as price is greater than AVC, so we know that firms are not going to shut down. So each firm is going to produce at the profit maximizing quantity where MR equal to MC. So remember, the market quantity supplied at different prices is the sum of the individual quantity supplies of each of these firms at the same price. So you're basically summing up horizontally individual supply curves. So what you get here is, for example, suppose you have 1,000 identical firms, then basically the market quantity supplied is you multiply individual quantity supplied by 1,000. So at P1, quantity to maximize profit is 10. So for 1,000 firms, the market quantity supplied is 10,000. At price P2, suppose the profit maximizing quantity is 20 for each firm. So multiplying this by 1,000, you have 20,000 as the market quantity supplied. And at an even higher price, when the profit maximizing quantity for each firm is 30, then the market quantity supplied is 30,000. So then by summing this up, you can get the market supply curve. And remember, here we're assuming that all of the firms are identical, they have the same costs, and their costs are not affected by other firms entering the market. So, and in the long run, okay, so that's the short run market supply curve. In the long run, remember, there is entry-exit. There's free entry-exit. And the key thing is this. If the economic profit is positive, then new firms will want to jump in. So what this means is that you're going to shift the short-run supply curve to the right because more firms are entering. But what that means is that the equilibrium price will drop, and that will reduce profit and start to slow entry. On the flip side, if the existing firms are operating at a loss, then some firms will decide to leave the market in the long run. But because of that, you're shifting the short-run supply curve to the left because fewer firms are on the market now. And so the equilibrium price will go up. The remaining firms are making less and less loss. So in the long-run equilibrium is when economic profit is 0, or the price is at the lowest point of your average total cost curve. Okay, so this is what we call the zero profit condition. In the long-run equilibrium, after all this entry-exit is complete, the remaining firms on the market would have 0 profit. Because if it's positive, then more firms will jump in. If it's negative, then some firms will want to leave. And so in the long-run equilibrium, you should have 0 economic profit. And this happens when you're at the lowest point of the ATC curve. That's where the marginal cost curve intersects with that. Because you produce at price equals to marginal cost. So what that means is that you are at where marginal cost equals to the ATC, and because of the 0 profit condition, so that means that you are at the minimum point. Because remember, the marginal cost curve intersects the average total cost curve at its lowest point. So if you want to produce at where the market price equals to revenue equals to marginal cost, and the profit is 0, that means that the price has to equal to ATC. So what that means is that there's only one point that this is going to happen because marginal cost only intersects with ATC at the lowest point. And in fact, this is where you get the efficient scale because you are producing at the lowest average total cost. Okay, so let's take a look how this is happening. So here you have the individual firm. It has your long-run average total cost curve. So this is already considering different sizes of factory. This is the lower envelope. And the marginal cost curve is intersecting at the lowest point. So in the long run, a firm is going to earn 0 profit. So that's exactly at the lowest point of the average total cost curve. So when the price is this price, then you don't show a profit or a loss because it's 0. And so for the whole market, the long-run market supply curve is just this straight line. Okay, so one thing you should note is that why should a firm stay in business if you're getting 0 profit? Well, if you remember, this total cost includes all implicit costs, which includes, like, say, the owner's time or owner's money. So economic profit is 0, but accounting profit is still positive. So in that sense, it's just that the firm is not making excessive profit. That, I think, is the key thing here. So they won't do even better doing otherwise. All right, so now let's summarize. So here we have an exercise. So for each of the prices, P1, P2, P3, P4, P5, find the profit maximizing quantity and whether or not the firm is making a profit or loss, and should the firm produce or shut down in the short run, and find the long run equilibrium. So let's join. So for P1, what is the profit maximizing quantity? 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Which one? Okay, so time's up. The majority of you say 5, and some of you say 10 and 20, and the answer is indeed 5. Okay, so for this profit maximizing quantity at P1, the firm should do what? Okay, so a lot of you say it's shut down, some say produce at a loss, some say produce at this long run equilibrium and earn 0 profit, some say produce and earn a profit in the short run. It's okay to don't know, but the answer is shut down. All right, so now next one. What about P2? What is the profit maximizing quantity for price P2? Okay, so the majority of you say 10, and the answer is indeed 10. So what should the firm do at this profit maximizing quantity? Should it keep producing, or shut down, or exit, or yeah? Okay, so some of you say shut down, some of you say produce at a loss, some say produce at this long run equilibrium. No, this is not the long run equilibrium, so you should still shut down. Okay, what about price P3? What is the quantity that maximizes profit for the firm at price P3? 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Which one? Majority of you say 15, and it is 15. So what should the firm do at this quantity and this price, P3? Okay, so now you guys are divided. Some say shut down, some say produce at a loss, some say produce at this long run equilibrium and earn 0 profit, and some say produce and earn a profit in the short run. And the answer is produce at a loss. So, okay, so now we went through 3 prices, so let's take a look. So for P1, P1 is so low, it's even below the AVC curve. So you should just shut down in the short run. So quantity is 0. What about P2? Well, the profit maximizing quantity is 10. That's where MR equal to MC. That's at the lowest point of the AVC curve. So this is your shutdown point. So you are indifferent between producing and still paying the fixed cost and just leaving the market, because your production, the revenue from your production is just enough to cover your average variable costs, and that's it. So you are indifferent between shutdown and still producing at this loss. What about P3? So now you are above the AVC curve, so you should keep producing, but you are below the ATC curve, so you're making a loss. So there is a loss here. So you decide to produce a quantity 15, but you're making a loss. All right, next one. What about P4? For price P4, what is the profit maximizing quantity? Okay, let's take a look. So most of you say 20, and the answer is indeed 20. So what should a firm do at this price P4? Okay, so the majority say that you should produce at this long run equilibrium and earn zero profit. And you are correct. Now finally, we go to P5. For price P5, what is the profit maximizing quantity? Oh God, this is such an easy question, right? We already ruled out all the other answers. Okay, so let's look at your answers. So the majority of you say it's 25, and it is indeed the right answer. Well, we already ruled out all the other answers, so you know that. So okay, so for this profit maximizing quantity of 25, so what should the firm do? Yeah, so the majority of you say you should produce and earn a profit in the short run, and that is the correct answer. All right, so at price P4, well, that's exactly at the lowest point of the ATC curve. So that's where to choose the MR to equal to MC, you should choose quantity equal to 20. And that's where you are at the lowest point of the ATC curve. So that is the long run equilibrium. So in the long run, that's where you are. And the firm is earning zero profit. And so it is the sort of efficient scale. At P5, MR equal to MC gives you quantity equal to 25. And now you're above the average total cost curve. So you are making a profit in the short run. Of course, in the long run, new firms will come in, and so of course that would affect the market price. The market price will go down because the market supply curve is shifting to the right. But yeah, that's the long run. All right, so let's take a look how this happens. Up to here, we all thought the demand is fixed. Now think of this. Suppose there's an increase in demand. So the firm starts at the long run equilibrium. So on the right is the market supply curve. You're at the long run, flat long run supply curve. And then you have the short run supply demand in blue. On your left, you see the individual firm is facing this market price, P1, and it has its marginal cost curve and ATC curve. You're at the long run equilibrium, so you're at the lowest point of your ATC. That's where marginal cost curve intersects with the ATC. Now suppose there's an increase in demand. So the demand curve shifts to the right from D1 to D2. That means the short run equilibrium price is going to go up. It's going to go to P2 because the short run supply curve is upward sloping, and when the demand curve shifts to the right, then you're shifting the equilibrium so that both quantity and price is going to go up in the short run. So what that means is that, whoa, the firms will be happy. Yay, I'm going to make a profit, right? So now I choose a different point to produce. where P2 equals to MC, and so I'm getting a profit. But what that means is that potential entrants see, hey, this market is a boom. I should just come in, right? I should jump in to earn a profit. So what that means is that attracting new entrants, you're shifting market supply curve to the right because new firms are joining. But what that means is that the price is going to come down. And eventually, you're back to the long-run equilibrium price of P1. The long-run equilibrium quantity does go up. So now you're at Q3, that's larger than Q1, but you're back at the long-run equilibrium price of P1. So here you see how free entry actually affects the market so that you indeed have a flat long-run supply curve at the lowest point of the ATC curve. And so there will be short-run fluctuations, but because of free entry exit, at the zero profit condition, you're back at this long-run supply curve. So long-run supply curve is horizontal because all firms have identical costs. That's an assumption we made. And this cost does not change as other firms enter or exit the market. If these two assumptions are wrong, so if firms have different costs, or if cost goes up as firms enter the market, then you could have an upward sloping long-run supply curve. So let's take a look at these two conditions. First one, firms can have different costs. Well, some firms are more efficient in producing some of the products than others. Then what's going to happen? Well, when the price goes up, the lowest cost firms will enter the market first because they would find that, hey, now the price is above my AVC or my ATC, so maybe I should jump in. But the high cost firms say, oh no, if I jump in, I'll make a loss. I don't want to join. And so it's low cost firms that will enter the market when the prices are low. And as the price further increases, then it becomes worthwhile for the high cost firms to enter the market. And of course, so then what you get is that even though it's still free entry exit, well, it's the low cost firms that's going to enter first, and then the high cost firms are going to enter later. But to sustain such high quantity, well, I mean, you need a higher price to convince the high cost firms to enter. So you have this sort of upward sloping long-run supply curve. Yeah, because if you need only a smaller quantity, then the low-cost firms are enough. But then when you want to increase quantity further, well, you need to raise the price so that the highest-cost firms are going to come in. And in that case, low-cost firms will be earning a profit in the long-run equilibrium because they have a lower cost than the other guys. But the marginal firm is still going to earn zero profit. The other possibility is that the cost of the existing firms would increase as firms enter the market. This happens if, say, the supply of a key input of this market is limited. And so, for example, land. Well, the land is fixed, so when more farmers come in, the land price will go up. And so what this means is that, yeah, so because when new firms come in, so you basically increase the demand for this input, and so the input price will go up. And what that means is that everybody's cost is going to go up, and so you have, again, an upward sloping supply curve. So these are what happen when the assumptions we made do not hold. Okay, finally we'll look at whether or not this market is efficient. Remember, to maximize profit, you always want to produce where MC equals to MR. And under perfect competition, because MR equals to the market price, so you are pricing at marginal cost. So in this sense, the competitive market is efficient because you are pricing at marginal cost. Total surplus is maximized. Yeah, because the marginal cost is the cost of producing this marginal unit. And the price that's paid is the value of the buyer that's buying this marginal unit. So yeah, total surplus is maximized here. So in this sense, we think that, or economists love competitive markets because you get the efficient outcome. You can maximize total surplus because you're pricing at marginal cost. And when we get to the next chapter on monopoly, then you know why we don't like that. Because in the monopoly, well, you will be pricing above the marginal cost. Okay, so now we'll come to the last story. So walking into a Walmart store at 2 a.m. with a friend to buy some stuff, your friend says, hey, I can't believe these stores open all night. There are 10 shoppers in this store, and only one checkout lane is open. It doesn't make any sense for this store to be open all night. Question, why do you think this Walmart is open all night? 2, are the costs of rent, equipment, fixtures, salaries of management, and so on relevant when the Walmart makes the decision whether to stay open all night? And the last thing is that if Walmart has only 10 customers during its daytime hours, do you think it would continue to operate? Okay, first question, why do you think a store would open all night? In Taiwan, I think the best examples are these convenience stores. I mean, even if you study and stay up late at 3 a.m. in the midnight, long past midnight, you can go to 7-Eleven or Family Mart and buy whatever refreshments you want. Earn revenue. Well, is it worth it? That's the problem, right? You do earn revenue if you open up all night, but is it worth it? The cost is low and the profit exceeds. The revenue is higher than the profit. Lower the AFC. Oh, brand impression. Oh, I love this. Okay, so the key thing here is, what is the cost for a store to operate all night? Well, it has to pay electricity, right? And also has to hire a late night worker to work in the late hours. Maybe that's it. Okay. So as long as the 10 customers, the revenue earned by these 10 customers, of course, it also has to pay for the inventory price that these people buy. But as long as the revenue earned can cover these costs, then you should operate. Okay, next one. Which costs does Walmart consider when it decides to stay all night, to stay open all night? Rent, equipment, fixture, salaries of management. The key thing here is that when Walmart makes the decision whether or not to stay open all night, it has to take into consider the variable costs for operating all night. So that includes the salary of the clerks, the inventory that you sell. To operate, you need electricity and all that. But for example, the salaries of the management, if that's not affected by whether or not Walmart is operating all night, then that does not factor into Walmart's decision. Well, of course, the manager in charge of the night, you might have to pay that manager more. But if management is getting paid the same amount, regardless of Walmart is going to operate all night or not, then it shouldn't count. And of course, the cost of rent, equipment, fixture, these things do not increase even if you operate all night. So those should not factor in. So it's like the long run, short run thing that should you operate all night depends on whether or not the revenue that you earn would cover the variable costs that's incurred when you operate during the night. And okay, the last question is, if Walmart had 10 customers even during its daytime hours, do you think it would continue to operate? The majority of you say no or nah, but there are some objections. Well, it depends on how much customers spend here. Well, yeah, but the question here is that if there's only 10 customers, would it be enough to sustain a Walmart superstore? And I think the key thing here is, if you don't buy from this superstore, what would you do? Well, you might just buy from Walmart.com, right? So this is a real problem. If you think of, like, say, Taiwan, we have convenience stores everywhere, right? But then these stores still have to think about, hey, even during daytime, we don't have enough customers. Should we just exit this market in particular? And well, we might want to open up someplace else, but not at this location. And in the US, where everything is like spread out, this is even bigger problem, because if you cannot attract sufficient customers, then I mean, it's not worth it for the rent, for the cost for operating a storefront there. Okay, to summarize, so the key thing for a competitive firm is you have a lot of substitutes, so you are a price taker. So the price P equals to MR equals to AR. And so as a result, you can find out that the profit maximizing quantity, we find out that the marginal cost curve is the firm's supply curve. In the short run, if the price is lower than AVC, then you should shut down because fixed cost is sunk. In the long run, you would exit if the price is lower than ATC because now both fixed costs and variable costs, there is no fixed cost that you cannot recover anymore. And under free entry exit, you get zero profit in the long run. So all the firms would operate at the efficient scale where it's the lowest point of the ATC curve. And the number of firms will adjust to satisfy the market quantity demanded. So for example, there will be a change in demand. So in the short run, this would increase prices if the demand shifts to the right or decrease price if the demand shifts to the left. So this will lead to either a profit or loss. But in the long run, you have this zero profit equilibrium that because of free entry exit, so positive profits would attract entry, loss would start to have C firms exiting. And so in the long run, you are back to the zero profit equilibrium. So this is my one-page summary. You have perfect substitutes. This is the key essence of perfect competition. And the result is price taking. In some other classes, you might find that some people may think that price taking is the key essence of perfect competition. But what I think is that the key thing is perfect substitutes. And price taking is the result. So here you price at P equal to MR equal to MC. And so in the short run, you decide to operate if the price is above AVC. In the long run, you should operate at the lowest point of the ATC curve. And here's the homework. And here I'm going to show you how much I love this chapter. It comes up quite frequently. All right, so that's the end of this chapter. And then I think I should move to the classroom experiment. Okay, because we're talking about a competitive market, so we're going to do the MobLab experiment on price takers, profit maximizing in the long run and the short run. So now I'm going to look at the game instructions. You are one of 10 potential drivers for a rideshare service in the area. So you're driving either Uber or your favorite rideshare service. And so hourly revenue depends on how many drivers choose to drive. The revenue depends on how many drivers choose to drive. So your revenue depends on how many hours you choose to drive. So the key thing here is that there are two things. One is, do you want to drive today? Well, because if all 10 of the potential drivers are drive, then hourly revenue will be very low. But if only you are the person that's going to drive today, hourly revenue will be very high. But then conditional on, say, okay, so like say 5 drivers are out today or 3 drivers are out today, the more hours you drive, the more revenue you will earn. So there are two choices. So in the first round, you'll be told how many drivers are in the market. So 10 potential drivers. In the following rounds, you'll be told how many drivers decide to drive yesterday. Like this, 3 out of 10 people drove yesterday. So you know how many other competitors are in the market. And so there's this predict your profit. This is the profit predictor to help you make the decision to drive or not. So you can choose how many drivers. If you increase or decrease, you will see how the revenue per hour would change. And then you can also choose how many hours you're going to drive. This will affect your marginal cost because the more hours, the more stressful you are. So you would have a higher cost. And you have a fixed cost because you have to rent the cab. So you have a fixed cost for driving. So if you drive, you pay $64. So then you can see, oh, so if there are 8 drivers and I drive 3 hours, the marginal cost is $5. Revenue per hour is only 12, and so you can get a profit. In this case, it's a negative. Okay, so after this profit calculator, then you can decide, do you want to drive today? Yes or no? So that's the first choice. Then, of course, if you want, you can go back to see the profit calculator and make sure you're making the right choice. But after that, they say, okay, so like for today, your fixed cost is $64. There are 3 drivers in this round who decide to drive. So the hourly revenue is $25. So you can choose how many hours do you want to drive. And then you get this projected, your actual profit. And then, so if you make your choice, then you can hit, so you decide how much you want to drive. Okay, so given this hours that you choose, like here 3 hours, so how much profit would you make? So it depends on your revenue minus your fixed cost minus your variable cost. So here, the revenue is, you decide to drive 3 hours, the hourly revenue is 25, so you get $75. The fixed cost is 64, and your marginal cost is $9. So you earn $2. That's how this is calculated. And of course, this lower triangle is your profit, if you want to think about it. All right, so how many drivers will enter? Well, we have to find out. Your goal is to try to maximize your profit or minimize your losses. Theory predicts how many drivers there will be in a perfectly competitive market. Well, you're a price taker here, and we'll see how accurate this prediction will be. All right, so now we shall start. Okay, so time's up. So let's go back to the slides. So how many hours should you drive in order to maximize profit? So the key thing here is that we talked about this throughout, MR equal to MC. And here on the screen, you see the hourly revenue, that's your MR. And you can see your marginal cost as you increase your hours. So you have to increase up to the point that MR equals to MC. So it depends. So if there's only one driver, then you should take 15 hours. If it's two drivers, 15 hours, 3, 12 hours, and so on. So what is the long run equilibrium number of drivers? 0 profit. So the long run equilibrium is when you have 6 drivers out of 10 are going to drive. Each of them are going to drive 8 hours, and they all earn 0 profit. Why is this the long run equilibrium? Because for the 6 drivers, they're earning 0 profit. So they're indifferent between operating or leaving. But the entrants don't want to come in, because if you come in, you'll be the 7th driver, and everybody's going to earn negative profit. And so that's not a good idea. But if any of these 6 drivers who are driving leave the market, everybody else is earning positive profit. And of course, that will attract entrants that's going to come in. All right, so the equilibrium number of drivers is 6. What we should look at is, did your group have exactly 6 drivers in the market? Or were there way too more or way too few? Okay, so let's look at the results. Okay, so this is round 1, average profit is negative. Round 2, close to 0. Round 3, again, negative. And round 4, round 5, some of them are positive. Yeah. Let's look at distribution of entry. This is round 4. So yeah, so 6 is the equilibrium, but some are above, some are below. So you see why some of them are high or low. Let's see round 1. Okay, round 1, yeah, so a lot of groups have too many people entering, so of course you're earning a loss. In round 2, so a lot of 6s, so that's the right one, but there are some variation. In round 3, 8. Too many people entering, so that's a bad idea. In round 4, it's scattered. In round 5, it's smaller. Okay, so because there are these only 2 or 4 drivers entering, so you're not getting enough. Okay, so what we see here is that it seems that you guys fluctuate quite a lot. But the long run equilibrium predicts that you should eventually converge to having 6 drivers and stay there. Well, maybe 5 rounds is not enough, so we need more time. Okay, so what is the long run equilibrium profit? We already saw this before. If there's positive economic profit, firms have incentives to enter. If there's negative, then firms have incentives to leave. If there's 0 profit, then firms would neither enter nor exit. That is the equilibrium. And drivers still make accounting profit, but not economic profit. And so, yeah, so if you remember from the entire class, the key takeaways are, so you have price takers accept the price that the market determines, a lot of buyers and sellers selling the same identical product, and free entry exit. And so this is the perfectly competitive market, and you have low barrier of entry and exit, so you have price taking. Okay, so that's a demonstration on price taking. And what I do want to revisit public goods contribution. We should have ran this experiment before the midterm, but we didn't have enough time. But since this one, you guys can make a lot of points, so I think that we should still run it compared to last one. So each round, each group member receives the same amount of money. You have to simultaneously choose how much to contribute to water purification. And everybody benefits from the project. So it's the total group contribution multiplied by the rate of return. So here, this will be your screen. It shows the current round out of total rounds, so round 2 out of 5. And then you have 4 people in your group. The rate of return is 50%. And so you move the slider to decide how much you want to contribute. So here it's showing you, oh, so you keep $13 and contribute $7. And so you hit contribute to submit your choice. And if you look at the history, there's a button for previous rounds. And okay, so overall, depending on your contributions and contributions of other people, so if you start with $20, rate of return is 40%. So if you contribute $12, other people contribute 18 in total, so total contribution is 30. So you start with $20, you contribute 12, so you have $8 left. But because total contribution for the whole group is 30, rate of return is 40%. So you have $30 times 0.4. So you earn $12 from the group project. That's exactly your contribution amount. So your payoff is $20. So the key thing for this public contribution, so I think I will finish this lecture talking about this because this is one of my favorite experiments. So it starts with this set of rules that everybody can contribute, but the problem is your contribution generates benefit for the whole project, but it's divided equally by everybody in the group member. So the problem here is, do you want to be selfish? Because if you keep everything for yourself and you still benefit from other people's contribution, then you gain a lot. But if everybody's doing that, then everybody's in a miserable state. But of course, it depends on what other people are doing, right? I mean, if other people are these selfish guys, then you might want to retaliate. But if other people are contributing reasonably, maybe you should reciprocate. And so the equilibrium here is literally the tragedy of commons, where nobody's contributing, because why should I? I mean, you guys are having fun. I'm not. But of course, that's really bad. So empirically, well, do people always contribute 0? Well, in a lot of research, when we run this experiment, people start with contributing around 50% on average. Although it's not really that everybody's contributing half. Some contribute a lot, some contribute 0, yeah, and so on. But then after several rounds, things start to deteriorate, and it could even go to nobody contributing, or only a small group of people that are insisting, but the majority of people are not contributing. Empirically, what you see is that there are altruistic people who insist on contributing, and there are selfish people who are always free riding. But the majority of the people are what we call conditional cooperators, who are happy to reciprocate. If everybody in this group is contributing, I also want to contribute. If nobody's contributing, I don't want to be the dumb person insisting to contribute. And so you see a lot of these variation going on. And okay, so up to here, this is empirically what we see. But then you can ask the question, how can you improve? I mean, in the experiment you just went through, well, I'm not sure if you're happy with the results, but can you try to encourage more contribution? If we were to run this in person instead of online, we could try to do this, to have somebody here to rally everybody, to encourage everybody to contribute. Or if we allow people to chat during the experiment, that may raise contribution. It could also be that actually empirically what we see in the field is that there are social norms against tragedy of commons. So if we allow people to punish the free riders in the experiment, that could induce high contribution. And if you think of it, the whole challenge we face regarding global warming comes exactly from this issue that reducing carbon emissions is a public good that's going to benefit everybody in the world, but who's going to do it? And if you look around, countries blame other countries for not cutting back enough. So you literally have this tragedy of commons here. You can apply this to a lot of things. If you have ever tried to do a team project in college, you know this problem. Nobody is preparing. Everybody's coming to try to free ride on other people's contribution. And that's the problem. I mean, well, if you're lucky, you get a group of people who are all willing to contribute, then your team project will be very successful. But if you're unlucky and get a bunch of free riders, then you're in big trouble. So project management is the same thing. So the question is, how can you, well, actually in project management, you try to design a lot of different incentive schemes to reward people who contribute and punish those who don't contribute. And so hopefully exert effort. Actually, one interesting thing that people do is you disclose contribution, and this is how you encourage donation. If you look at our university, we have 临泽馆, we have 介寿馆. If you go to these temples, you see these names that who contributed how much and so on. And so these disclosures is a good way to sort of encourage people to contribute. Okay, so one interesting question is, would pre-play communication help? So here I'm going to show you a video. Yeah, so we don't have time to finish this discussion, but you saw pre-play communication may not always work.